Welcome to the webinar this afternoon. So my name is Brett Lonsdale from Lightning Tools, and I'm going to be taking us through our product DeliverPoint. And we're going to be taking a look at, first of all, some of the different permission challenges that people face when using SharePoint, either as a site owner, site collection administrator, or also from the IT perspective as well. Maybe being a SharePoint administrator. So we'll get a good understanding of what sort of challenges people face using SharePoint to report and manage permissions. And then we're going to take a look at how DeliverPoint can really overcome some of those challenges for all of those personas that we mentioned. So even if you're a site owner, a business user, we'll have a look at how DeliverPoint can help you. And equally, again, as a site collection admin or a SharePoint admin, what tools you have to effectively manage permissions a lot better inside of your organization, of course, throughout SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive. So for those of you who are not familiar with myself or with Lightning Tools, I'm just going to do a very quick intro. There's quite a bit to cover, so I'll keep this brief, but yeah, just to give you an idea as to who we are. Yeah, we're a company based in the UK. We have been established now for 17 years. We have a subsidiary organization, Lightning Tools LLC, which is based out in Orlando, Florida, and we're headquartered here in Leicestershire, England. So this is not our only product. We have a portfolio of around about 10 different products, and we sell those products to customers worldwide. We've got around 2,000 active customers across all different industries and all different shapes and sizes of organization as well, spanning from sort of 10 user companies up to the hundreds of thousands. And yeah, most of our products, including DeliverPoint here, will scale to that number as well. So yeah, my name is Brett Lonsdale again. I'm the founder of Lightning Tools and also a Microsoft MVP here in the UK. So that's a bit about us. Feel free to ask more questions, maybe in the Q&A, or keep those to the product if you prefer. So just want to cover, first of all, what we're going to be looking at. So as I mentioned, we're going to be taking a look at, first of all, why you might need a SharePoint permissions management tool. So the sort of challenges that people face when they're trying to report and manage permissions inside of SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive. And then we're going to have a look at how we can use DeliverPoint from the perspective of the site owner and IT. And we'll also focus on what is new in DeliverPoint 4.4, which is going to be launched this month. So within the next few days, we'll be pushing those changes out on our website, so you can download those and take advantage of some of the new features. And at the end, we'll have lots of time for Q&A. So if there's any questions, feel free to at any point put them in the chat window or the Q&A window. I probably won't let those disturb my train of thought until we get to the very end, but feel free to pop those in there. My colleagues may answer on my behalf, or we can go through and read some of those questions out at the end and make sure that they get addressed. So first and foremost, what I want to do is just cover off why you might need a permissions management tool for SharePoint. So as the illustration here will suggest, every single SharePoint environment is full of files and folders and subfolders and so on, let alone the containers that contain those files and folders. Of course, the lists and the libraries and sites that are, I guess, sprawling through our SharePoint environments. And most of the time, it's very challenging to be able to determine who's got permissions to each of these different files and folders throughout your environment, both from an IT point of view and also from a site owner point of view. So from a site owner point of view, this is really the way that SharePoint has been designed. Of course, it's created in a way that anybody can create a site. They become the owner of the site, but with that ownership becomes responsibility. So as the site owner, you would be able to, or you would have to make sure that permissions are set up in a way that your content is still secure. So we've got people putting documents and folders, files, etc., into document libraries. They're creating list items and so on, which is great, but they're also sharing them. So they may be sharing them externally, or just sharing with them internally as well. And there could be some direct permissions that are set on some of that content also. So you can use SharePoint, of course, to be able to report and manage the permissions. Some of the challenges that you will find there, one of them it's very difficult to really get a good understanding as to how the permissions have been structured inside of your site. What it won't give you visibility on is anybody that is a member of an Active Directory security group, for example. You will see that an Active Directory security group is permissioned, or is a member of a SharePoint group, but it won't show you the people that are inside that group or the other groups that are inside that group for that matter as well. So you may have some nested AD security groups that you're unaware of going on at the Active Directory level, and therefore it's very challenging to have the full picture as to who's got permissions within inside of your site that you're managing. So that's with the AD security groups. When it comes down to the content, as that previous image would suggest, we've got lots of folders and subfolders that go very, very deep. And with SharePoint, you can only report and manage the folders one by one. We don't have a way of getting the ability to select multiple files and folders, or even all files and folders, to know what sharing links have been created or what direct permissions have been created as well. And quite often in some organizations, you'll find that this leads to sort of oversharing as well, and content sprawl that becomes really, really challenging to try and manage. So we're going to have a look at how DeliverPoint can address some of those things as we go through it. But then also from the IT perspective as well, maybe your IT manager, CIO, CTO, could just be a site collection administrator, SharePoint champion, managing multiple site collections and what have you. And this can also be challenging to try and stay on top of that content. You're disadvantaged in a way that you don't know from the granular point of view who should have permissions to the content, because maybe you're not working with inside that specific department. So when you do see external sharing links to unknown names, we don't know whether those people should have access to that content or not. So it can be really challenging to centrally manage permissions. But what we can do is to make sure that when people leave the organization or changes are made, that we've got a mechanism to make changes in bulk and be able to report in bulk as well. And DeliverPoint will offer that, so you'll be able to see how we can use it within that scope. So the alternatives are to use things like PowerShell, but PowerShell can be very time consuming to, of course, learn, but also to run as well. If we're trying to run that within real time across large scopes, it can take a long time to come back with the content, and if it's not what you imagined it to be, then we of course need to go through and change that PowerShell and rerun it again, and that can be extremely time consuming. There is in SharePoint Premium the data access governance, but yeah, that is reporting only. So that is giving you the ability to see the problem. So maybe you've got things like everyone groups added where they should not be, and things like that. And if we inform somebody that's a site owner that this is a challenge, then it's down to them to go and find all those places manually as to where those everyone groups have been added, and then remove it. So these are all sort of challenges that you might be facing throughout SharePoint. So what we're going to do is just have a look at some of those challenges before we move on to DeliverPoint. So I'm just going to bring up a SharePoint site, and we'll have a look at this from a site owner's point of view first of all. One of the things that can be a little bit misleading to a site owner, may not be misleading to you being an IT person, but from a site owner's point of view, one of the things that you do see in the right-hand corner is the number of members within inside the site. And from first glance, this looks like there's only a handful of people that are permissioned within inside this specific site. But if you start to dive deeper using SharePoint out of the box, we can click onto the site permissions. And as we expand the groups here, we can see some clues as to the fact that there might be more people than just those 8 or 9 members. We've got the everyone group added in here with read permissions, for example. I've also got an Active Directory security group, which doesn't get enumerated, added to the site members group. And there could also be other permissions as well that aren't being displayed. So what we could do is click the next link down, which will take me into the advanced permission settings. And sure enough, there's a few other permissions that have been assigned in here. So we've got some user accounts that have got direct permissions, giving those people design, edit, and contribute permissions as well. And that is not including any sharing links going on inside the site or anything of that nature. So it's really difficult for a site owner who is not necessarily an IT person to be able to determine the full picture as to who's got permissions to that one particular site. And that's just focused on the site. When we start looking at all these other lists and libraries, we've got client documents and just the standard document library and so on. You have to also report and manage those individually, as mentioned. So yeah, we can go into the library settings to see who's got permissions to the library, whether or not the library has unique permissions or not. And then if we wanted to start looking at the folder permissions, and this is just at the parent folder level, we have to go into the manage access, and then we can see whether this has been shared, the people with access to it, the groups with access to it, and whether or not there's any sharing links. So if I tried to do that concurrently across two folders, you'll notice that I can't. That manage access option disappears. There is some DeliverPoint options at the bottom here, the sharing links and discover permissions, they're ours. You'll be able to see those very, very shortly. But these are the sort of challenges that people face when they're trying to manage the permissions within a site. And I've only got a handful of files and folders in here. Of course, a traditional organization is going to have potentially hundreds of thousands of files and folders, and not really knowing how deep some of those go. So that's really from a sort of site owner point of view. When we're looking really at a IT perspective, we would either have to use PowerShell, as mentioned, or would have to go and visit site to site and do the same thing that the site owners are doing in order to be able to try and establish the permissions that have been set. So we'll have a look at how DeliverPoint can address some of these. Let's have a look at DeliverPoint from the site owner and the IT perspective. So one of the benefits of DeliverPoint is it is integrated into the SharePoint environment. So it's contextual as well, not just available through SharePoint as in an application page, but you'll see DeliverPoint, as you just saw, on the edit menu against each item. We can select multiple items and see some of the DeliverPoint reports as well. We can see it throughout the lists and libraries on the command bar, and we can also see it at the site level. So we've got full access to the product there, or in context with where we're actually trying to report and manage the permissions. So as we see that content, we will be able to report across multiple files and folders, including subfolders. We can have a look at all of our sharing links in one place, so spanning the entire site. You can also make changes to those permissions in line with the permission report itself. So if we see something within inside a report that we don't want, so maybe somebody's got more permissions than they require, or there's people that have sharing links that shouldn't have, we can make changes in line with inside the report. And not only just for that one object, but we could also affect child objects as well. So if we saw something at the site level, for example, I could remove permissions at the site and have that trickle down into the different lists, libraries, folders, and subfolders, or even subsites as well, if I wanted to. We can schedule those reports as well. So if it's reports that we want to see on a monthly basis or on a weekly basis, we don't want to have to remember to run these reports. We want them to come to us. We can do that, and we can schedule for other people. You'll also be able to schedule reports on the basis that they could be extremely large. So if we've got sites that contain vast quantities of folders and subfolders and files and so on, maybe with a lot of broken permission inheritance, and the report is going to take a long time to produce in real time, it's something that we could then schedule and access it once we're notified that it's complete. We can also report against sensitivity labels. So if you use sensitivity labels as part of your compliance, we can report on those. So if you've set up a label called confidential, for example, we can have a look at everything that has been marked as confidential within the site and audit who should have permissions to that content. And overall, you just have better confidence that the people that you're seeing within inside your site, the content within it, is permissioned appropriately. And then from the IT perspective, you can span multiple sites. You can span multiple site collections if you want to. And you can also report against large scopes using the scheduled reports. Sharing links that can span multiple sites and site collections can also be included. And then we've also got information available, such as dead accounts or disabled users, or even external accounts and licensed users. These can all be reported at the site collection level. So as personnel changes occur, so maybe somebody leaving the organization or something like that, we've got this one place where we can go to see, well, what permissions did that person have in SharePoint, and then we can go through and remove those permissions or transfer them to an alternative user if required. You can schedule the reports on behalf of site owners as well. So we take it, some people that do create a site or site collection are not necessarily IT savvy. They don't know about permissions and how to handle all of that. So one of the things we can do is schedule those permission reports so that they get to just audit it. There's a nice user-friendly interface where they can go through, they can filter and sort the report in the way that they want. Then they could just notify us and say, yeah, I've gone through this, we're fine with it, this is as it should be. And that's again something that you could do on a weekly or monthly basis if needed. We've also got user-focused permission reporting. So if there's somebody that, again, may be changing roles, leaving the organization, we can focus the reports on that specific user. So we can see all the AD groups, the SharePoint groups, the Microsoft 365 groups that they have permissions to, build up that big picture, have a look at any direct permissions and any sharing links that that person has, and then we can decide what to do with those permissions, whether we need to remove them all or reassign certain permissions to other people as well. And then we can do the same thing, not just for SharePoint, but also across OneDrive and also across Teams. And it doesn't matter whether you're using classic site collections or hub sites with associated sites. You'll notice that DeliverPoint can cater for all of that through the tree view. So let's jump in and take a look at some of this. I'm going to first of all just jump back straight into that Lightning Tools sales site again. And what you'll notice in here, in the top right corner, there's a submenu that drops down. It gives us the ability to access the full DeliverPoint application. So if it's the first time that you're coming into DeliverPoint, you might find that, there's a lot of reports in here and lots of different actions that we can perform and so on. So for that matter, we include some of the different sort of shortcuts. There's just a single click away and you can get reports against this particular site. So if we hit the discover permissions, for example, this is generating a real-time report. And what you'll notice in here is we've got a list of all the different people that have access to this site. So there's 4 pages of people with access to this site, not just the 8 or 9 members that you saw that's illustrated here in the top right hand corner. So we've got a lot of people that are permissioned. We can see the permission level that they're assigned. So there's quite a few users with full control, so they may be over permissioned. We've also got people with other permissions like read and so on that may or may not be required. And then on the far right hand side, we've also got how those permissions came about. How did they get assigned to this particular user? We can sort and filter these reports. So notice we've got the sort ascending and descending. We've also got the filter against each column, so we can choose what we want to see. And you've also got the ability to export it, or we can even save it as a template so that we can easily get back to this report again when we need to, once we've applied all the criteria to it. And you can also render it by groups. So if this is too overwhelming to see all these users and their permissions, we can always flip it to groups first as well, and then we get to drill down into those groups. So for example, we can see the sales group in here, which is the AD security group. And that's given me a bit of an alert already. I can see that has a nested AD security group, which we'd have had no idea of when we were looking at the standard SharePoint permissions. So we can drill into that nested group as well to see who's permissioned there. And it doesn't matter whether you're using this in the group view or in the by person view, we'll be able to still see that nested AD group and how it's showing up. So if we just take, for example, demo user 8 here, you'll see that demo user 8 has edit permissions overall, and those permissions came about through the sales AD security group, which is nested inside the SharePoint group. If I take a look at, let's see, I think demo user 4, this is where the sorting comes in handy. Yeah, let's go through and sort this. So with that particular user, that user is inside the nested AD security group. So we could have removed those permissions or thought that we'd remove the permissions, but we'd have been unaware of that AD group membership if we were using SharePoint natively. Okay, so the permission report is very quick and easy to access, as you can see. So it's just single click away for the discover permissions. We can then sort and filter it as required. One reason for filtering it might also be we've got a lot of users here with read permissions. When we get into that, we can see that this is because of the everyone group. Maybe we're okay with the everyone group being in here. So what I could do is just filter it out, so we can see all of the other permissions that have been assigned. So now I'm seeing people with the design, the edit, full control permissions, and I can focus on those. Now, if you need to make changes, you can make those changes directly from within the report itself. So if we just navigate through, for example, there's some direct permissions that have been created here. I can see demo user 23 has contribute permissions. Let's suppose that demo user 23 is changing their role. Somebody's taking over their job as a sales account manager inside of this site. What I could then do is say, well, I'm going to give those permissions to the person that is taking over their role, and we can execute that, and that change will take place. We could also copy the permissions, we could delete the permissions, we could revoke certain permissions, and so on. And notice that this doesn't just stop at the site level, but it also goes deeper than that if we choose to. This actually found an expense tracker list where it's gone through and changed the permissions there as well, because demo user 23 happened to have unique permissions to that. So now demo user 22 has those permissions instead. So we've got that ability. And if we just simply go through and refresh that report, you can see how this has changed from the 22 to 23 and so on. So that's something we can do at site level by discovering the permissions. We can also go into our lists and our libraries and report on those. So the challenge that we're overcoming here is the ability to report across multiple files and folders. So even with several folders selected, we can still get into things like the discover permissions and the sharing links. So if I discover the permissions at this level, we're able to see all of those items that I selected, who's got permissions to each of those items, and again, how those permissions were applied. And if we were maybe having the use case where we want to check a certain person's permissions across each of those folders, we can filter on the person instead. And you'll notice in here that some of those folders are grayed out, some are in full color. Those that are grayed out here, they have inherited permissions, so we can't make changes to those without breaking the permission inheritance. But those in full color, we could go through and change if we want to. And again, we can do that just simply by selecting the row and performing the changes that we want to make through here. Okay, so everything that I've done so far is selecting specific content to report on it, but that's not always the way that you need to run the permission reports. One of the things that you could do, for example, at the library level, is click DeliverPoint from the command bar of that library, and by doing so, when I go to run maybe the advanced discover permissions report, I can just have it look for everything that has unique permissions within inside this library. So even if I go 20 folders deep, it doesn't matter. We can go that deep and just look at where the unique permissions lie. And I can also include sharing links if I want to. I can show the folder structure rather than seeing all these files and folders as a flat report. So we know where they are. And then we've also got those security labels or sorry, sensitivity labels included if we want to get to that level as well. And you can also pre-filter this. So if there's certain information that I'm looking for, like external users or people with specific permission levels or anything like that, we can do that as well. So notice it returns the list of permissions for me. So that's everybody with access to the library. But as we scroll down, we're now able to see things like the commission sheets folder, and we've got files and so on. But it's only focused on those objects where the permissions were set to unique. So now we've got everything that we need and can manage it from there. So again, everything can be exported. So we can export this report out to Excel if we need to. We can also save it as a template so we can regenerate that very quickly if need be. So that's also off the menu there, as well as being able to make changes on the fly. The other report that you may have noticed that we have in here is the sharing links. So running the sharing links report, we don't have to, again, visit file by file or folder by folder. We can produce the sharing links report. This will show me the list sharing links as well as the file and folder sharing links that exist inside the site. So we can see the expense tracker list has unique permissions. And then I've also got some pages and some folders and some files that also have a sharing link. We can see who shared those and when did they share them. We've also got the type of sharing link, so whether it's an anyone link or specific people link, the overall permission that's assigned, and we can also see members of those sharing link folders as well. So where we see something like this document here, it's an anyone link, so I can change the expiration date of that if I need to. And when we've got things like specific people added, we can also go through and make changes to that. So if I decide that I no longer want demo user 6 to have access to the sharing link, I can just simply remove that user, or I could also lower the level of permissions that are assigned via that sharing link as well. So it's a real advantage being able to find all of your sharing links in one place inside the site, rather than visit every single file and folder that you've got individually to build up that big picture. The permissions summary is a great place to start if this is all new to you. Maybe you've taken over the ownership of a site. We can produce the sharing link, and it gives us some high-level information first of all, such as how many items have unique permissions, how many sharing links exist inside this site, what are the containers with the most broken permissions, and things like that. And then we can drill down into the detail that we want to focus on. So notice where we've got 13 items with unique permissions. Clicking onto that icon there will actually show us what those 13 items are. Anything that is alarming to us, we can then go through and select, and we can then produce any of the reports with that item as the scope. So, so notice that we just focused on that one commission sheets folder at that point. Now, sometimes it's difficult to determine, well, why might that have unique permissions? Why is it showing up in here? So what we can also do is compare it. So I could compare that folder with the site or with the library, or even with another folder if I want to. And when we hit that compare permissions, this will tell me what the differences are. And that may make sense, it may not. If it doesn't make sense, we could re-inherit the permissions, or we may accept it and leave it as is with the unique permissions. But either way, we've got an understanding as to why the permissions may be unique. And likewise, we can drill into the sharing links and so on from there as well. So another option that we've added to the menu, we're going to drill into this a little bit later on as to what's new, but you'll notice we can also schedule these reports. We had scheduling anyway, but we've improved the scheduling, so I'm going to wait till the very end to show you this. But if you know that you've got some extremely large libraries, a lot of content and so on, you can schedule those reports so that they get produced and you get notified once they're completed. So we'll jump in and have a look at those very, very shortly. But before we do that, let's switch personas. So let's start looking at DeliverPoint from the perspective of IT. So now we're maybe site collection admins, maybe we're SharePoint admins, tenant admins. We could be a CIO or a CTO or IT manager, and we're trying to determine who's got permissions to things on a larger scale, not just within a site. So when you first come into DeliverPoint, it's going to have the scope of the site that you were in when you accessed it. But what we can do is click onto the tree view option here, and you can change that scope. So by showing the tree view, it will show us all of the site collections, and we can see the different types of site collections as well. So whether these are classic site collections, whether they're Microsoft 365 groups, or whether they're hub sites and so on. It's all listed in here. And don't worry, you can't produce a permission report, or you can't change permissions if you don't have the ability to do that, usually with SharePoint. So this is all running within the context of the rights that you would have typically. So what I can do is just come down and look at things like the hub sites. So if I look at the hub sites, this is a great way to actually see everything that is associated with the hub. So this, you can have a lot of associated sites to a hub, and if I need to add somebody to each of those associated sites, one of the things I can do is just select the hub, and we could come down here to grant permissions. I could choose who I need to grant the permissions to. So I'm just going to pick on a user, and we could put them into a group, or we could also grant permissions to a group, or I could also select direct permissions, which I wouldn't necessarily want to do, but I'm just going to do it for illustration purposes. If I choose the design permissions here, we've got the option of assigning these permissions to all of the associated sites in one go. And we can produce a summary email. That's not going to be an email per associated site. It's going to be one email showing you all of the permissions that you've just been granted. And then we can hit run on that, and that will go through and assign permissions to each associated site within the hub, saving us a tremendous amount of time. First of all, being able to find those sites, and secondly, then going through those steps of actually assigning those permissions. So really quick and easy to do things like that. You can also manage all of your teams from in here, so that will show all of the teams and private channels and so on. So if I did a search here for tech support, as we drill into our tech support site collection, you'll be able to see different icons for things like shared channels and private channels and so on. So we can report and manage those, and that comparison report comes in really handy when you're starting to look at shared permissions, shared channels with inside there. And there's also an accounts view. So this is where we can focus in on one particular user. So if we did have that scenario where somebody may be leaving the organization, what we can do is do a search on somebody. We can select that account, and then from the reports menu, we can have a look at things like their unique permissions. So this will determine all of the groups that user is a member of, either directly or indirectly. So you'll notice that we've got the everyone group, they're directly a member of that, of course. The sales AD group, they're directly a member of it. And then we've also got some SharePoint groups where they're indirectly a member of those. We can see site permissions, list permissions, and item permissions. And this is actually a really nice, clean example of how permissions should look, because they're all permissioned via groups and sharing links. If I change this, I'm just going to have a look at myself or the account that I'm signed in with, and rerun the unique permissions report. You'll notice that my avatar is popping up in a few places. So this is these are all direct permissions, and you'll see here that I've got things like full control set on subfolders and so on, which I may not want to see. So I could go through, if there's not too many, simply go through and select these ones that I want to remove, or maybe I want to lower the permissions. So where they've got full control, maybe that's over permissioned. So I could come into the revoke permissions option and maybe flip that out to edit or something along those lines. Or I could straightforward remove them. But if there's too many, maybe I just want to make sure that there are no direct permissions for this person. Maybe I want everything to be assigned through a SharePoint group or an AD group. What we can then do is just simply come down to the delete permissions and uncheck these options. So this is the modify SharePoint groups and the modify Microsoft 365 groups. So I'm taking away the ability for DeliverPoint to modify the group memberships, but I'm saying delete permissions for this person. So the only permissions it can delete are the direct permissions that this person is assigned inside that scope of whatever I selected from that unique permission report. So some great changes there that we can perform. Going back here to the site, let's just choose a single site so we're not overwhelmed. There we go. So within this site here, we'll have a look at some of the other operations that you can perform. So in here we've got some users with things like the design permissions and so on. So what I can do is also use jobs such as transferring those permissions. So if demo user 24 was retiring or leaving the organization, let's just go through and assign this to someone else. Again, I can affect subsites and lists and folders and items. I can also support a rollback, allowing me to reverse this job if I need to. And we can also modify the SharePoint groups and the Microsoft 365 groups. So performing that change is now going to go through and remove permissions from demo user 24 and assigning them to demo user 15. And as you can see, I've not had to spend time finding all these files and folders and subsites as where they are, where this person's got unique permissions. It's done all of that for me. And if we just simply come in and refresh our view here, we should see demo user 24 be replaced with demo user 15. And if we realized I made a mistake, we can go through and choose that transfer job and roll that back. And that will put it back to how it was in the first place for me. So you can see all of those permissions being re-added and taken away from demo user 15. So again, we'll just refresh the view one more time, and sure enough, demo user 15 has disappeared and demo user 24 is back with their design permissions. Okay, so that's the transfer job. There's also copy permissions as well that we can perform. So that's where the source account will retain their permissions. This is great if we're onboarding more people into a department and so on. And then you've also got things like the straight delete permissions and grant permissions as well. So these are fantastic for managing multiple scopes. Those scopes can be multiple site collections. You can search. So if, for example, we wanted to look for everything marketing related, we can start to type in marketing. We can now select multiple site collections and perform changes or reports across all of those site collections in one go. And if we know these are going to be extremely large, they're going to take some time to produce a real-time report, then we can go to the scheduling option and simply schedule one of those reports instead. We have some scheduled reports already created, so I'm just going to go into that. But just while that's pulling those up, I'll just talk about some of the different schedule options that we have. So you'll notice there's the ability to schedule the discover permissions. That's the first one we saw. We can also schedule the sharing links, unique objects as well. And then we've also got at site collection level things like dead accounts and unlicensed users, external users, and unique permissions as well. But these are some of the different reports that I've already scheduled and they're created. And I'm going to spoil a little bit of a surprise here by showing you what some of these reports look like. If you're already familiar with DeliverPoint, when you clicked onto one of these links before, it would download an Excel file for you. Now we've got a much friendlier user interface where we can actually see the report as though it's a real-time report, but this is actually recorded information. But we can still sort it, we can filter it, and we can make changes against it as well. So if I want to maybe look at people with a specific permission, we could look at everybody with full control, for example. And if there's somebody here that we wanted to remove, we can go through and select that. And coming down into the account management, we can just simply say delete those permissions, and it would delete. That's something that we couldn't do when the export of a scheduled report was inside of Microsoft Excel. So yeah, you can sort it, filter it, make changes, and so on. Okay, so scheduling the reports as well. When you go to schedule a report, again, you can choose your scope, and then you've got the option of specifying the filter of what we want to see. It's not just based on permission level, but we can also tailor this to show things like external users and disabled users and so on as well. And you can also include whether you want to go as deep as the items or just focus on the site level and what have you. Couple of new features in here. You'll also notice that we can schedule this on behalf of another person. And yeah, there's another option as well, which I'll show you in just a moment. But yeah, there is that scheduled option also with inside there. Okay, so just going back to this tenant view. So some of the other reports that we have, you've seen the sharing links, you've seen the discover permissions. The discover permissions advanced. This is great to be able to focus on not just this the site level, but also include maybe everything with unique permissions. So we can perform that. You can even include things like sensitivity labels if you want to. We can even show inherited permissions, but I feel that's a bit overwhelming. So I'm just going to leave it like this. So as I hit generate, it's not just going through the site permissions, but also taking it all the way down into the list and the item permissions for me. So we've got everything that we need to see in order to be able to effectively manage permissions for the site collection all in one place. Now, the one challenge that you might have is that what you see on the tree view isn't necessarily your responsibility. You may not be the site owner for some of this stuff. You wouldn't be able to make changes to things that you're not a site owner for. But what we can do is run the owned site collection report, which is going to show me everything that I am the owner of in one place. So from there, I can manage all of my stuff. I can stay on top of the permissions that I'm responsible for. So this is showing all the teams and the groups, classic SharePoint sites, etc., that I manage, and we can then select these and produce the permission reports that we need to see against those objects. So if it's just a simple discover permissions, we can run that, see who's got permissions to that content, and that could be fine. You can also run this from an IT perspective on other accounts. So if I wanted to, for example, have a look at everything that Sandy is the owner of, I can run the site collection report against her and see all of the site collections that she is the owner of. And of course, we could go through and manage the permissions if I have the rights to do that. But equally, I could transfer the ownership as well. So if I decide that I want to take over the ownership of this site collection for whatever reason, I could do that and transfer that ownership across to me or to another user. Okay, so we've got that ability, and then also from the site collection level, we go through and choose some site collections. You'll notice some of these other reports, such as dead account reports. So this is a great one to be able to see people that are disabled in the Active Directory that still have permissions, or people that are deleted from the Active Directory but still have permissions. And we've got the ability to go through and clean some of those permissions up. We can delete those users if need be, and remove them. And you've got the same thing for unlicensed users, external users as well. Just a couple of other things before we get into what's new. We also have snapshots. So what we can do is get the permissions in a state where we need them to be. This is really useful when we're provisioning new sites. We can add the groups that we want to use, the AD groups that we want to use, and so on. And once we've done that, we can then take a snapshot, and we could give that a name. So I'm just going to call this webinar or webinar demo. I can choose whether I want to include the content within the site as part of the snapshot as well, and the permissions that are set on that content. And once I've taken that snapshot, if we just simply go through and make a couple of changes, so let me just discover the permissions in here, and we'll maybe delete these permissions from demo user 7. So those permissions are now being removed. What we can then do is come back down to the snapshot and choose the recover permissions. So make sure I've got the right thing selected there. Yep, so there's my webinar demo snapshot that we just took. And I can compare the permissions, and it will compare the permissions between the snapshot and real time. So notice here we've deleted demo user 7's permissions of contribute and edit. And if we're fine with that, we can just leave it. However, we can also go through and remove those changes, or we can recover the snapshot and put that back in place. Okay, so some great features like that as well. Okay, so there's a lot to throw at you in terms of features of DeliverPoint. I'm conscious of time and wanting to get through the new content. So let's just have a quick look at what's going to be released this month, and then we'll have time for a Q&A as well. So in terms of new features, few things I've already hinted at. We've got a new side panel within SharePoint sites, so that now within the context of a site and as a site owner, you could schedule your permission reports. So these are more accessible to site owners. We've also made some large scale permission report improvements. So if you have exceptionally large AD groups or Microsoft 365 groups, or if you've used the everyone group and you happen to have 100,000 users in there and so on, that can slow down our production of a permission report, because it has to enumerate all of those people in order to be able to show you everybody with permissions. So we've got some lazy loading and things like that we can apply to the group membership. So you can still see that detail if you need to, but if you only need to know that the everyone group is permissioned, then you can also just report at that level, which you'll be seeing. We don't have to enumerate all of those people. We can also, or we do also, prompt you to schedule a permission report if it appears after triggering it that this report is now going to take a tremendously long time. So after 30 seconds of producing a permission report, if it's not ready yet, it's going to say, would you like to schedule this? And you can then schedule it and get that notification once it's complete, which is the next bullet point. You can send notifications when permission reports are complete. And like I said, we've also got that delay of the AD group members as well. So let's take a look at that. I'm just going to jump back in to DeliverPoint. Okay, and we'll have a look at the side panel scheduling first of all. So you may not have seen the schedule option before. The reason for that is, for the scheduling to work, there's some additional setup that you need to do for DeliverPoint to offer the schedule features. And a lot of people don't see this because you've not taken that additional setup. Whereas now the schedule option will show for everybody, but it will be disabled if you've not done that additional setup. So you can go through and set that up and then access the scheduled permission reporting. So I'm just going to go into the Discover permissions, and what you'll notice here inside the side panel, again, I can set up a filter on this. I can choose the permission level filter, or I could choose to look at just external users or whatever I want to do. I could say this would be quite a useful one to create. What I could have is the permissioned via display name is everyone. So if I want to look across the site for the everyone group being added, so if somebody's shared a folder with everyone, then yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And it could be that it's going to take a long time because of the vast amount of content inside this site. So for that reason, I'm scheduling it. We can choose the frequency, so it could be now, meaning just start doing it and then notify me when it's ready. Or if this is something that I want to review every month, then I could set that up as well. This is where we can well, either have it repeated every month or just schedule it for a month's time. We could do that as well. I can notify the people that need notifications, and so I'm scheduling it for this particular user. I'm going to send them an email when it's ready, as opposed to them just finding it. And then we can also choose, again, what's included, what's not included inside the report in terms of the granularity. And once I'm happy with that, I just hit schedule, and they will then get notified when this report is ready, and they can go and access it from a link within the email, or they can also come back and access it again from the scheduled reports menu within inside of DeliverPoint. So that Discover permissions, the sharing links, unique objects, and unique permission reports, we've seen those all in real time. You've got the option of those all as scheduled reports there. So yeah, that's one change. If we just go back into DeliverPoint and go to a Discover Permissions Advanced, what I'm going to do with this one is delay the retrieving of the AD group members. So again, this is useful if you've got maybe an everyone group that contains 100,000 users. Even if you're only reporting against the site, it's going to take a long time to produce a real-time report because you've got 100,000 users to enumerate through and show their relevant permissions. So all we need to see here is probably that the everyone group is permissioned, and then we can drill into that later. So if I just hit the generate on that one, the report comes back immediately. And what you'll notice against some of the Microsoft 365 groups or the AD security groups is a get members link. Yeah, we've got the get members against my sales group and against my everyone group. So just clicking onto that will then load that content. So as I mentioned, probably you don't need to do that on the everyone group. It's everyone. So I can see the everyone group is permissioned. I don't need to expand it, but I could do if I wanted to. If you've maybe got 30,000 people inside your sales team, you can hit that get members. Here's, I only have 4 people, but I can expand that and see those people at that stage as well. So again, this is really catering for the fact that you may have a very large environment, and it's just allowing those permission reports to run a lot faster than they would do ordinarily. All right, the next one, as I mentioned, is the ability to automatically schedule a report. So in order to produce this, you might come across this issue on a single document library if the document library contains a vast amount of content. In order to be able to replicate this, I need to do maybe a tenant scoped permission report. So I'm going to run a discover permissions in real time. I'm not going to schedule it. So I'm just going to run this. It's going literally across every single site collection, every site, every list, and producing a report for me. Sorry, not every list, just every site. And I'm hoping this takes longer than 30 seconds. And if it does, we'll be prompted to schedule it. There we go. All right, so I could now say, yeah, I want to schedule this. It's taking way too long. So let's just hit the schedule button. And I've scheduled the report. Now I'm going to be able to access that scheduled report once it's done. I don't have to sit here waiting for it. It will just be produced, and I can go through and access that from the scheduled reports menu, and so on. So yeah, as I mentioned, the scheduled reports themselves vastly improved. These are no longer Excel files. If you want an Excel file, you can still export from the UI. So this here you can see is containing 203 pages of permissions for the site. There's 69 pages of list permissions, and there's 103 pages of item permissions. So if I need to be a bit more granular than what this UI is going to offer me, it does give me sorting and filtering and so on, as mentioned. But I could still export that into Excel if I want to do some further manipulation, maybe do some charting or whatever I want to do on that content. All right, so they are the new features. Now we can have a Q&A. So we've got about five or 6 minutes. I've seen a couple of bubbles popping up with some questions. My job here is to see those ones that have not been answered by Sandy. So I may ask Sandy to actually come off mute and give me a helping hand here. Otherwise, she's going to sit there whilst I read these. So yeah, Sandy, if you want to come off mute at all and let me know if there's any questions that I need to answer or demonstrate. Equally, if you have a question and you'd like to ask it, feel free to raise your hand as well, and I can unmute you and feel free to ask it that way. Now, I see Sandy can't unmute, so yeah, I'll address some of these questions Anyway, I see, Matthew, you've got your hand raised, so I'll unmute you. Or allow your mic.
Oh,
you
great.
Can,
thanks, Brett.
okay.
Thanks very much. And thanks, Sandy, as well. Here I am, trouble again. So yeah, I just saw you. So currently, you know, we've got quite a few SharePoint security groups set up, and we've got a mixture of AD groups, and now we've just moved to SharePoint Online. So we started using Azure groups and some dynamic Azure groups. Now, currently, you know, I can query the AD groups to see the users in them using users and groups, right? But I can't query we don't have the permissions to go and query the Azure group memberships. So with your tool, if it sees that we've got an Azure group added into a SharePoint security group, there's an Active Directory group in there, which may be on-prem. And then we've got an Azure group in there. I'd still, you know, I just want to make sure that if I expand that Azure group, I can see the memberships.
Yeah, absolutely. So I presume by Azure group, you're referring to the security groups as well. But
yes.
Just in exactly. So they are also enumerated. Even if they're nested groups, you'll be able to see that full membership. You do need to give the rights to DeliverPoint in order to be able to do that as well. So the app itself would need the ability to enumerate those groups. That's just like a read permission that you assign at that level. You will also see a read-write option, and that's we don't allow through DeliverPoint the ability to change what is actually an AD security group or an Azure security group without it being a Microsoft 365 group. So of course these are actually behind the scenes security groups. So we can make changes to the Microsoft 365 groups through DeliverPoint, but we deliberately do not allow you to change anything for just standard security groups, just because of the knock-on effect that could have to other applications. But the wording of the permission that you're granting is allow the ability to read-write security groups, but that's purely because it's a Microsoft 365 group.
So what we'd find then, so we're using Azure dynamic groups specifically, though, so there's a query rule to bring people in and out of those groups automatically. So obviously, if we were using your tool to change memberships or change the ownership of some content, that will work fine if it's in the Active Directory on-prem, but for the Azure side of things, it won't have permissions to write those changes.
Okay. Yeah. So it wouldn't make the changes, but you'd be able to read the permissions.
At least read it. Okay. Thanks, Brett. That makes sense.
Yeah, you're welcome, Matthew. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I see a question in here that's not yet answered. That is, what's considered a dead account? There are a few the report that I cannot locate in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center nor in the Azure portal. How can I retrieve them and then permanently delete them? Yeah, so that's really the point of a dead account. So a dead account you would not find in the Admin Center because it's a deleted account. So typically, if somebody was to leave an organization, if that's just down to the AD administrator to offboard that user, they're going to typically go through and delete the dead account. Best practice would be to disable the account, but if they deleted the account, then it would show up as a dead account if that account still has permissions inside of SharePoint. So there's no security risk with that, because that account can't authenticate. Nobody would be able to authenticate as that account, but it's messy. What you tend to find is if you produced a audit of people that are permissioned within a particular site and that user is showing up, that could raise alarm bells as to why this person is still permissioned. So for that reason, we are offered the dead account reporting. So the dead account report will show you all of those users. You could then remove them using SharePoint, and that will remove them as a site collection user and take away the permissions as well. So yeah, great question. There is we do distinguish between a dead account and a disabled account. So the disabled account, of course, that could be re-enabled at some point. So you may want to look at those more closely before you do just simply delete them, because effectively that account may have been disabled because it was a contractor, and that contractor may come back and so on, in which case it may require the same permissions. So you could decide to just leave it as a disabled account, or you could, of course, remove it if you needed to as well. All right. And Bevan, sorry, Reese Bevan. Yeah, let me just allow your mic. So you've got your hand raised. So feel free to unmute.
Hi, Brett. Two questions. One regarding the sharing links. So can you retroactively add expiry dates to all existing sharing links that DeliverPoint has picked up?
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So the expiry dates are specific to anyone links. So the expiry date option isn't available, I don't think, at least on like specific people and so on. So where it can be used, you'll notice that you can go through but you got to change expiry here. It's already got an expiry date. The one beneath it, notice it doesn't. So if I go through and select that, I can still go through and choose an expiry date, and that has now set that expiry date for me. So yeah, you do have that option to go back and apply those if need be.
In a hypothetical scenario where I have thousands of sharing links on the site I've inherited, could I do that in bulk?
Yep, absolutely. So where I accessed this was from a site. So that's looking at all of the sharing links across a site. But if you need to, from the DeliverPoint menu, again, showing the tree view here, I could select certain site collections, and from that reports menu, I can run a sharing links report at that level. So this is looking at all the sharing links across each of those 3 site collections. Just by chance, those ones that I selected, they don't contain many site collection, many sharing links. But notice that you can do the same thing at that level. And yeah, you could bulk update them. So actually, the best way to do that would be to filter. So you could filter on anyone links, and you could also filter on those. So we'd be looking for null, however I want to do that. So that way I could then go through and change the expiration by doing a select all and setting the expiry date on each one if you wanted to blanket update them.
That's fantastic, thank you. And just one more quick question if you have time.
Of course, yeah.
Currently, we export the template report that we've set up and visualize it in Power BI for our site stewards. Is there an option to, when you schedule a report, can you choose to save it in a particular location so we wouldn't have to manually save it in our SharePoint folder each month?
Yes, I think you can. So the scheduling of permissions, probably not through the UI. It was there where we could specify a library. It is actually putting that as a file inside a library. I just can't remember exactly the location of that one. Maybe Sandy will answer that one in the chat for us, because I think she knows. But yeah, effectively you could do that, or of course you could also export out as an Excel file as well, and
that's great,
and specify the location. So
perfect, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you. I see there's another couple of questions as well. So what sort of access controls are there to delegate access to DeliverPoint itself to my data owners and IT staff, but not allow other employees to access the tools? So the way that DeliverPoint works is it runs within the context of the current user, and it's built into the SharePoint framework. So there's no option of delegation or raising the level of permissions for a user. So it's running in the context of the current user. But what you can do is with the scheduled reporting option is bring that to the notification of somebody else. So if you wanted a permission report to be produced, you could produce it on behalf of another user. So maybe with somebody that does have those privileges, but there is no sort of super user account as such, if that's what you're referring to, for somebody to work with. So we're operating in the same way that SharePoint operates out of the box, in terms of if you have full control, you can run a permission report. But yeah, there's no sort of delegation of access to DeliverPoint. Anybody that does not have full control will not see the product. So if you access a site and you're concerned that people are going to be seeing this menu, they're going to be seeing the reporting options on folders and files and so on. They just won't see that option if they're just somebody with edit permissions or something along those lines. It's only going to be users with full control to that content. So hopefully that answers your question there, Nick. Yep, so same with site collection administrators. So site collection administrators would also be able to access those permission reports. Okay, just trying to determine which anything unaccessed. So are the values in the account column in any report coming from the display name attribute? I'm seeing values that do not match the actual display name of the user account. So yeah, we do have the, if we just open up the people card, might make it more visible to what we're looking at there. So there's of course going to be the email, there's going to be the display name and login name. And in fact, you would see all of that information if we were to export the report. So if I export this, it will allow you to determine what's what. So this is obviously an export into Excel. And in here, you can see the the display name, the username, and the user email address is the information that's available, if I've understood the question correctly. Okay, so in the dead account report, yep, so this is the, so we've got the display name and the login name shown. So hopefully that that answers that question. Not sure if there's anything unanswered. So yeah, I guess if there is any outstanding questions, feel free to drop those into the chat window. But also, I'll just let you know how you can reach us as well. So help@lightningtools.com, or if you prefer, you can ping me as well on brett@lightningtools.com, and I'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. In the meantime, I just want to thank everybody for attending. I hope you found this useful. If you do want to book a private demo of DeliverPoint, you can do that on our website. So just go onto lightningtools.com and you'll see a book a demo link. Yeah, we'll be able to go through and answer any questions that you might have and run through those scenarios that you might have as well. But yeah, in the meantime, thank you very much. If you're considering Copilot as well, make sure your permissions are in order, and hopefully speak to you very soon.